Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on the Boxer on the Beltway Podcast Network. And the Boxer on the Beltway Podcast Network, as usual, can be heard on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio.com. We're on TuneIn. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts, Castbox, and we're also on other podcast networks I may not even know about, but I think we're on some of them as well. And we thank you all for your support as we continue to do our work here in the Box on Beltway Podcast Network. And this week we're going to talk about some interesting one bout that took place this past week that was a brilliant performance in front of a national television audience for the first time in a national television audience, and he did very, very well. We're going to once again remind you of a huge weekend for locals. Unfortunately, none in the Beltway, but these boxers will be all throughout this coming weekend. And we're going to pay tribute this week to two actors. Now, one of these actors, I think just about everybody knows. I mean, he's been a fixture. He was a fixture in our culture for generations. And the other one is a major part of my childhood. And I do want to talk about him as well. So that'll be our podcast for this week. The Boxer on Beltway Podcast Network is brought to you as always by Real-Time Pain Relief, from boxers to ballerinas, from shoulder pain to muscle strain, everything in between. Boxing Law on the Beltway recommends Real-Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. You go to freezepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief to give you a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief, now endorsed by two-time world heavyweight champion Big George Foreman. And don't forget to try out his knockout plan for Real-Time Pain Relief. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods, all at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Well, the big performance this past week was from Antoine "The Last" Russell out of Capitol Heights, Maryland, a super lightweight. He maintained his perfect record this past Saturday with a 6-round stoppage of Giovanni El Lobito Santiago of Dorado, Puerto Rico. That was at the Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, and that was Antoine Russell's debut on Showtime television. And he looked great. He was dominant throughout the bout. He landed numerous jabs and power punches, and in the 4th round, he landed a solid right-left combination that sent Santiago to the canvas. Now, Santiago got up, but he was in really tough shape. But Santiago was able to be the first opponent for Antoine Russell to make it past the 4th round. So that was big. That was a moral victory for Giovanni Santiago. But Russell increased the pressure, maintained his accurate punishment. At the end of the 6th round, Santiago's corner did not allow their fighter to continue. And, of course, the Russell corner was a family affair with Gary Sr. at ringside providing his training expertise. Gary Russell Jr., the WBC featherweight champion, in the ring fighting the cuts. And the second assist was Gary Allen Russell. And Allen Russell as well. So always a family affair with the Russells. Now, Russell is now 14-0, all 14 of his wins by knockout. And Santiago gets stopped for the very first time in his career. He falls to 14-2-1 with 10 KOs. Now, a lot of things happen. One thing happened after this bout is that Russell had been calling out Adrian Broner. Now, again, I don't know if Adrian Broner wants any part of Antoine Russell, to be perfectly honest with you. I really don't see that happening. I don't see it happening. And if it does happen, Broner's in big trouble, in my opinion. There's no question about that. Meanwhile, the interesting note about this particular bout, the referee for this contest was Sharon Sands. Now, Sharon Sands has worked a number of bouts over the years in Washington, D.C. Now, she lives, however, in California. So that's why she works in California as well. She's never worked any bouts anywhere else in the Beltway other than D.C. And that's the situation there. So Sharon Sands was able to work the bout against Gary Antoine Russell. So that's the big weekend we had here. Good performance, definitely a great performance for Antoine Russell, and he'll hopefully continue on to bigger and better things. Now, this coming weekend, big weekend for the Beltway. A lot of things going on coming up this weekend. Friday, June 4th, at the Hotel Holiday Inn in Cuernavaca, Mexico. Scott Cujo Sigmund, the super middleweight out of Bedford, Virginia. He'll be in a 10-round bout against undefeated Eric Bazinian of Laval, Quebec, Canada, by way of Armenia. Now, Sigmund is 35-14-1, 18 KOs. He comes off a third-round TKO over Anthony Williams. That was on February 20th in Greenville, South Carolina. Bazinian's undefeated, 25-0, 19 KOs. He's sixth in the world by the WBO, coming off a 6-round TKO over Timo Lane on February 21st in Rimouski, Canada. So that'll be Friday, June 4th. Scott Cujo Sigmund in Cuernavaca, Mexico, taking on Eric Bazinian. But the other big cards are coming up on Saturday, June 5th, and on Sunday, June 6th. Now, June 5th, we talked about this card, but let's go over it again. The 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There'll be a group of Beltway boxers that'll be a part of a day-night doubleheader at the 2300 Arena. In the nightcap, Hagerstown, Maryland super middleweight sexy Albanian Yank Plana. He'll headline that card in an 8-round bout against Brandon B. Rob Robinson of Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Plana, as we said, 8-3-1 with 4 KOs, looking to break a 2-bout losing streak, including an 8-round split decision against Rafael Ibokwe on November 28th in Houston, Texas. Robinson's 15-2, 10 KOs. He last fought in March of 2020, scored a second-round TKO over Josue Abando at the 2300 Arena. Now, he's the only Beltway boxer on the nightcap card. On the day card, the afternoon card, there'll be 3 Beltway boxers on that card, including Dr. Davar Jengawar Farhadi of Frederick, Maryland. He's super middleweight. He'll be in action in an 6-round bout against Blake KO King Mansfield of Burlington, North Carolina. Farhadi's 8-0, 7 of his wins by knockout. Has not fought since December 2019 when he stopped Vincent Backus in the 5th round, 2300 Arena. And again, he was finishing his medical studies in Iraq, and that's why he was not boxing during that time period. Mansfield is 7-3-1, 4 KOs. He looks to bounce back from 5th round TKO loss to Aaron Cooper on November 7th in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Also in that card, Greg Outlaw, the super lightweight from Bowie, Maryland. 6-round contest coming up against Andrew Rogers of Elkhart, Indiana. Outlaw 8-0, 3 KOs, last fought in May of 2019. Scored a 4th round knockout, I should say, over Martin Nicholas Matamala in Fairfax, Virginia. Rogers is 4-9-2, looks to break a 2-bout losing streak, including a 6-round majority decision loss to Nahir Albright at the 2300 Arena in March of 2020. And then Woodbridge, Virginia super welterweight Edgar the Tiger Torres. He'll box for the first time since January of 2016. He battles Kashawn Hutchinson of Reading, Pennsylvania in a 6-round encounter. Torres won a 4-round unanimous decision over Henry Mercer in Springfield, Virginia. Hutchinson's 7-5 with 1 KO. He last fought in November 2019, won a 6-round unanimous decision over James Robinson in Reading, Pennsylvania. So those are the 2 cards on Saturday, June 5th at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The cards are being streamed on BoxingBXNGTV.com. I think you can find that on Facebook. But those bouts are being streamed on Facebook and Boxing TV. All right, so that's Saturday, June 5th at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Then on Sunday, June 6th at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida, former IBF, WBA, and IBO super welterweight champion Swift Jared Hurd. He'll be the co-feature in a 10-round encounter against Luis Arias of Boca Raton, Florida. This will be on a Showtime pay-per-view that has changed dramatically because the main event on that card has been messed up. Badu Jack is still in the main event. John Pascal apparently tested positive for a illegal substance. He's out of the event. So that's a tough break for him, but he'll be out of there. But Hurd and Arias are still there. 10-round encounter. Hurd out of Ackeek, Maryland, 24-1, 16 KOs. Bounced back from his title loss from Julian Williams, winning a 10-round unanimous decision over Francisco Santana in Brooklyn, New York in January 2020. And again, this will be the first bout since the recent passing of his father, Fred. Now, a lot of people have talked about the way Hurd looked when he fought Francisco Santana. It was a different fight. He is under the auspices of K. Karoma, who has a lot of our folks here in and out of the Beltway, including likes of the Davis brothers, Kelvin and Keyshawn. He also has Troy Isley. He has Shakur Stevenson and a few others in his camp. So, K. Karoma, again, I believe he's still the assistant coach of the U.S. Olympic team, but as a pro trainer, he has gotten very, very good and doing very, very well. So we'll see. But Hurd looked a little different. I think he tried to show he was a boxer more so than just a puncher. And we'll see how that works going forward against Luis Arias. Arias is 18-2-1, 9 KOs. He hadn't fought since August of 2019. We lost the decision to Luke Keeler in Belfast, Ireland. Now, making his pro debut on this card, once again, will be Washington, D.C. welterweight Jaleel Major Hackett. He'll compete for the first time on the Mayweather Promotions banner, and he'll be facing a guy by the name of Angelo Cox, I believe his last name is. Like that, he's out of Texas. He's also making his pro debut, so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. So he's originally from Angelo. Angelo, I think his last name is Cox. I'm double checking that. Angelo Diaz, Angelo Diaz out of Monahans, Texas. He'll be making his pro debut as well. So we'll see what happens there for Jaleel Hackett. Just turned 18, and he is making his pro debut under the Mayweather Promotions banner. So a lot to talk about in June coming up. Nick Sullivan out of Norfolk, Virginia, fighting in Orlando, Florida. On the 19th, heavy hitting diva Franchon Cruz Dezern goes after the unified female super midweight championship, takes on Elaine Cederus. We have another card at the 2300 arena so far, including Germantown, Maryland lightweight Tommy Avalar. And, of course, the big one on Saturday, June 26th, Javante Tank Davis battles Mario Elasteca Barrios of San Antonio, Texas. That'll be at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, and that will headline a Showtime pay-per-view. So a lot to talk about in the next few weeks. No question about that. Now let me put a cultural hat on and talk about two actors that passed away recently. And the first one I'm talking about, if you watch TV over the last, I'd say 30 years, you definitely knew this man. He was a guest star in so many shows. I remember he played a very good role as a villain in 2 episodes of the original Hawaii Five-0. He played the character Big Chicken, who was a drug dealer. He was on The Untouchables. He was on so many shows as a guest star, and primarily being a heavy. Probably being a bad guy, primarily. But his most famous shows that he was involved in were all comedies. And they were pretty legendary comedies, too. In the 60s, he was Happy Haynes, one of the crewmen that worked with Quentin McHale in the show McHale's Navy. He was in there with Ernest Borgnine and Joe Flynn and Tim Conway. By the way, his name is Gavin MacLeod. I meant to say that. I forgot to say that. I'm sorry. But his name was Gavin MacLeod. And in the 60s, he was part of McHale's Navy. And he worked there for 2 seasons. Then he left the show to be a part of the cast of the Steve McQueen movie, The Sand Pebbles. That's why he left that show after the 2nd season. Then in the 70s, he became part of one of the most famous, I think, comedic ensembles in television history when he played newswriter Murray Slaughter on the classic Mary Tyler Moore Show. And you look at that great cast, of course, headed by Mary Tyler Moore herself, but you look at people like Ed Asner, John Amos was part of that cast. He played the weatherman, Ted Knight, Ted Baxter played Ted Baxter. You had, of course, Georgia Engel, who played Ted Baxter's wife. You had Rhoda Morgenstern, played by Valerie Harper. Phyllis Lindstrom, played by Cloris Leachman. You had some great talent on that show. I know I'm forgetting a few, and I shouldn't, but just a fantastic show that ran for a number of years, and really was a great, great show, the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And again, Gavin MacLeod played Maurice Slaughter on that show. Then in the late 70s, early 80s, he was known probably by his best role as Captain Merrill Stubing, the captain of the Love Boat. And, of course, he had another great cast with him there with Lauren Tweez, Bernie Coppell, Fred Grandy, Ted Lange, Jill Whelan. I mean, he had a fantastic cast on that show, too. A cast that really stayed together well after the show was over because they became spokespeople for the Princess Cruise Line, especially Gavin MacLeod himself. He was a major spokesperson for the Princess Cruise Lines. And so he did that well up until his, he died at the age of 90 this past week, and he did that well into his 80s. And, they did a lot of reunion shows. That's one of the few casts that for the most part are still together, except now for Gavin MacLeod. But the majority of that cast, in fact, I think all that cast really is still with us and stayed together. So they really had a really great friendship for years. And so Gavin MacLeod, and I remember there's a clip on YouTube. There was a new Love Boat show that starred Robert Urich as the captain. And I remember Phil Morris was on that show. And the clip that I've seen of that YouTube show had members of the original cast on the show. They were on the Love Boat that time. So that was kind of fun to see. But Gavin MacLeod was a great actor, no question about it. Great character actor, could play just about anything, really. And he passed away this past week at the age of 90. Also passing away, and also at the age of 90 too, by the way, is a man that not a whole lot of people in this country know. In Canada, where he's from, he's huge. But in this country, not a whole lot of people know his name. But if you're my age, and I'm almost 58 now, you remember his voice, because his voice was a major part of your childhood. If you ever watched cartoons or even some of the holiday specials that were on, he was a part of that. His name was Paul Soles. Now, Paul Soles, again, not a whole lot of people probably know that name, but growing up, one of my all-time favorite cartoons, and still to this day, one of my favorite cartoons, is the 1960s version of Spider-Man. And I won't sing the theme song, but you all know the theme song. And Paul Soles was the voice of Peter Parker and Spider-Man on that show. And that show was known for some great action, great characters, and I think some of the best music I've ever heard on not only a cartoon show, but maybe some of the best music I've ever heard on any type of television show. And there's a YouTube video that has just the music from Spider-Man, and it's, I mean, you can't help but jam to it. It's like fantastic music. And during the last season of Spider-Man, which I believe was their second or third season, there was a major change in the show. Ralph Bakshi, who was known for some very trippy cartoons, and some of them were a little risque. He did Fritz the Cat. He did Heavy Metal. I think he did Heavy Metal, yeah. And no, he did. He didn't do Heavy Metal. He did do Fritz the Cat, though. And that was the first X-rated cartoon, for those who don't know. But anyway, he also did a show in Canada primarily called Rocket Robin Hood. And this was a show that had Robin Hood and the whole fable and tale of Robin Hood as merry men, Sheriff of Nottingham, and all that, transported to the 30th century. And it was the planet of Nott, N-O-T-T. And no, it was Sherwood Asteroid. That's what it's called, Sherwood Asteroid. And he was the sheriff of N-O-T-T, Nott. And Rocket Robin Hood and Merry Men, they all flew on jetpacks and so forth. And Paul Soles worked on that show as well. And he and it's interesting crossover because there's an episode of Spider-Man called Revolt from the Fifth Dimension. And it actually is a redo of a Rocket Robin Hood episode. Just insert Spider-Man and his characters into that show, replacing Rocket Robin Hood and his characters. So that was very interesting there. But yeah, Paul Soles worked on that show. And if you watch some of the holiday shows during the week, I know you've seen the one that's usually on ABC. It's done by the Rankin Bass organization. It's called Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And it's one of those almost look like puppets. They're not claymation, but they look like puppets in the show. And Paul Soles was the voice of Hermie, the elf, in that show. And he was well known by people who watched that show. So, but for me, he'll always be Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. I know he did some other voice. I think he did the Vulture's voice on that cartoon too. But he was a great one, no question about that. So, Paul Soles, I believe he passed away at the age of 90 as well. Two great people, Gavin MacLeod, Paul Soles, that meant a lot to me. So I just wanted to pay tribute to them. Well, that will do it for another edition of the Boxer on Beltway Podcast Network. Once again, the Boxer on Beltway Podcast Network, brought to you as always by Real-Time Pain Relief. You go to freepainoffer.com. Buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief, now endorsed by Big George Foreman. So try his knockout formula for Real-Time Pain Relief. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Gary Digital Williams. Mind you, as always, keep supporting the best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Thanks for listening. Take care.